We're going to dive into a fear that, let's be honest, haunts so many of us in the modern workplace. It's that nagging, sinking feeling that our career, our whole livelihood, is built on pretty shaky ground. So today, we're going to explore the core ideas from Tony Pisanelli's book, The Career Confidential, to really get a handle on this feeling and figure out what to do about it.
Just let that question sink in for a second. Could your livelihood vanish tomorrow? I know it's a jarring thing to think about, but it's a question we absolutely have to face, because for more and more of us, this isn't just some hypothetical fear, it's a very, very real possibility.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to break down 3 major career-threatening emergencies: the sudden job loss, that constant fear of the pending axe, and good old burnout. Then we'll get into the most important part, the huge mindset shift you need to actually take control. Let's do this.
So Pisanelli frames the modern career landscape as a minefield, and it's filled with what he calls employee emergencies. And look, these aren't just little bumps in the road. We're talking about powerful, insidious forces that can totally upend your professional life. And here they are, the big 3. First, you've got the sudden shock of a job loss. Then there's that chronic, low-grade stress of knowing the axe could fall at literally any moment. And finally, the slow, grinding erosion of your health that comes from burnout. Each one is its own unique danger, and they are definitely becoming more and more common.
So let's kick things off with that first emergency, the job loss. And to really get what that feels like, we're going to look at the story of Michael, one of the author's clients. His experience just perfectly captures that brutal shock of being let go completely out of the blue.
Imagine this. After 8 years of dedicating yourself to a company, this is what you get: a cold, impersonal letter. Your employment has been terminated. That's it. No thank you, no support, just done. Michael said it made him feel like he'd been treated like dirt, and that feeling, it stuck with him for years. Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. This is Michael's breakthrough moment. See, his feelings were completely split. On one side, you have pure rage. He felt ambushed, like a total failure. But on the other side, there was this incredible sense of relief. Relief from a toxic boss, from fighting bureaucracy, even from a commute that was actually dangerous. This duality, this is the key.
And boom, here's the turning point. By helping Michael focus on that feeling of relief, his coach completely reframed the event. What felt like a career-ending disaster was actually a life-saving event. That right there shows you the incredible power of shifting your perspective.
All right, on to emergency number 2, the pending axe. This is that constant, nagging anxiety that your job could just poof, disappear at any moment. And to illustrate this one, the author shares a pretty powerful story from his own career.
To give you some context, the company Pisanelli was at was in total turmoil. It cut 50,000 jobs over 15 years. That's more than half the workforce. So the axe wasn't just pending, it was falling all around him, all the time. Then one day, his manager casually asked if he'd be interested in a redundancy package, telling him his generalist skills made him easy to replace. It was a total bombshell.
You can imagine that conversation was a massive wake-up call. It forced him to make a huge strategic shift in how he thought about his career, and it was all guided by this simple principle from Einstein. He realized that just being successful, just doing his job, wasn't enough. He had to become uniquely valuable.
And here's exactly how he did it. He didn't just sit around and hope for the best. No way. He got proactive. He specialized in the growing field of risk management. Then he applied that skill across the entire company, started training others in it, and kept his eye on industry trends. He was building a career, not just holding down a job. He made himself so valuable that when he eventually did ask for a redundancy package, they told him no.
Now for our third emergency, and this one, man, this one is something so many of us are way too familiar with. It's burnout. It's that slow-motion erosion of your health and your sanity from the just relentless pressure of modern work.
And in its most extreme, terrifying form, burnout actually has a name. It's called karoshi, a Japanese term that literally means death by overwork. The author tells this story about his colleague Jeremy, who just walked away from a super prestigious consulting career because he saw the 14-hour days for what they were, completely unsustainable and, potentially fatal.
And please note, this isn't just some abstract theory. The human cost is real, and it is absolutely devastating. You see it in these heartbreaking stories, like Neakayo's, dead at 27 from working himself to exhaustion, or Sakura's, who took her own life at 24.
And this is a global problem. In 2023, there were reports of American CEOs literally dying on the job from work-related stress.
Okay, so we've looked at these three pretty terrifying emergencies: job loss, the pending axe, and burnout. The big question is, what on earth do we do about it? Well, it all comes down to a fundamental shift in your mindset. It's about going from being a passive employee to becoming the active owner of your own career.
Let's get real for a second. That old myth, the one where your employer will take care of you and that loyalty is a two-way street that guarantees your security, it's dead. It's gone. The new reality is that your employer is focused on their business goals, not your security. And that means one thing and one thing only. You, and you alone, are responsible for managing and protecting your career.
And that brings us to the absolute core message of this whole book. Real security doesn't come from your job. It comes from having a plan. It's about building a career that's resilient, a career that has options, a career that isn't dependent on the whims of one company or one boss. It comes from being prepared, so a career challenge never, ever becomes a full-blown emergency.
So that's the question I want to leave you with. When you really look at your professional life, are you just kind of hoping for the best? Or have you taken responsibility? Have you started building a real, proactive plan to secure your own future?